Welcome everyone. Welcome to CloudSEK's knowledge sharing Wednesdays. Actually, we do conduct knowledge sharing sessions on every Wednesdays. Uh, this week we have Hitesh, who is a threat intelligence researcher at CloudSEK. He'll be talking about MITRE ATT&CK Framework. Uh, Over to you, Hitesh.
Okay, thank you, Sahil. Thank you for the introduction. So, good evening, everyone. I hope you all are doing well. So, I'm Hitesh, currently working as a threat research analyst at CloudSEK. So, today we are going to start with the topic MITRE ATT&CK Framework or the MITRE ATT&CK Framework, like some people say that thing as well. So, why we are going to study this topic is a question like why this topic only? So in the recent stats, like in the COVID times or in the pre and the post COVID times, we have all seen a tremendous hike in the ransomware attacks. Like the users are being compromised, the organizations are being compromised by the attackers, by the APT groups. So and they are fetching a lot of money. So and organizations are in trouble. So it's being very hard to track down these people by not knowing their tactics and their techniques. So here where the MITRE ATT&CK framework come into the picture, like it will help us to know about the attackers' tactics, the techniques which they are using to compromise the system, and then how we can analyze those techniques and tactics and use and try to put a mitigation factor among them to protect our defense systems. So let's see what topics we're going to cover during this talk. So in the outline section, we will be covering the introduction part, covering the what is MITRE ATT&CK framework and like what does it actually mean. Then a bit introduction about the cyber kill chain. Then the four modules which are like officially a part of the MITRE ATT&CK documentation, that is the threat intelligence, detection analytics, adverse simulation and red teaming, assessment and engineering. So coming to the introduction part, MITRE is a government-funded organization based in Bedford, and here the attack word stands for like adversarial techniques and common knowledge. Adversarial here means the bad guys, like in the layman terms, we can say the bad guys who wanna compromise the system, wanna attack the system. The tactics the tactics are the things like how we are gonna like at the different stages in the attack chain, like how this attack will be carried out, like how this if any attacker is trying to attack a system, then how that attack will be carried out, like how the initial access will be taken, and then how the discovery will be done or how the collection of the data will be done. And over here then the comes the technique part. The technique part is like what kind of method or what kind of techniques they are using to initiate the initial access, like to get the initial access. So like either they can use this peer phishing link or drive by compromise. They have two techniques. They have multiple techniques, like out of those, like spear phishing and drive by compromise to get the initial access. For the discovery, they can use the RDP, like a remote system discovery, to discover the network. And in the collection section, they have the technique is the data from network shared drive. That's how they can uh, get the data out of it. Now, threat intel is like threat intelligence as a proactive defense measure, and like how the like how the MITRE ATT&CK framework fits into the threat intel space, like how it fit into the space. Like we generally see about the IOCs, like but the IOCs can be like it contains the hashes, IP addresses, but uh, but it can be changed at any point. But at this MITRE ATT&CK framework has some tactics and the techniques which could be like which not cannot be easily changed or altered by the attacker. So they might be using the same tactic or the same techniques to compromise the system. So in the coming part, we can see like how we can defend those techniques and tactics to defend our systems. So coming to the next part is the cyber kill chain. The cyber kill chain is a seven-step method through which like we get to know about the attack mechanism. Like it has the first method is the recon process, the reconnaissance, weaponize, delivery, exploitation, installation, C2 like getting access, and the action and objectives. So here we get to know like the recon is done, the weaponize is done, then the delivery is done, but it is not telling us like how, like what technique was being used to do the recon process. It tells us about the modification, it tells us about the weapon, but which weapon it is being getting we are using it, it doesn't tell us about that. So here the MITRE attack comes into the picture. It tells about like if we are doing a recon process, then what kind of technique we are using to do this recon process. If you're doing a delivery, like if you're delivering a payload or we're delivering an exploit, then with what method we are delivering it, with what technique we are delivering it, the exploit. So here the MITRE attack framework comes into the picture. So now coming to the first module, that is the threat intelligence. So the threat intelligence is all about knowing your attacker, like knowing your adversaries, uh, what they're doing, and using this information, we can make the enhanced decision, like how we can protect their techniques from their tactics. So this is a process chain. So after just covering these 5 points, I'll show you the demonstration how we can use this MITRE ATT&CK framework in the real time and get the most out of it. So these are the 5 points. You guys can have a look, like checking the sector name. Like we'll just go by the sector, or either we can search by the group as well. But initially, like it's easy for anyone to search according to the sector. Like if we belong to the banking sector, we can go for the financial. Belong to the energy sector, we can search the energy, or any other, or the hospitality, healthcare sector, and any other sector. Then out of which, then we'll get a list drop down, out of which we'll get APT names. Then we'll go to the any of the APT and read about their tactics and techniques. And then we go to the attack navigator, where we see the APT's a heat map. We'll show you everything in the process. So this is the front page of the attack navigator. So in the attack navigator, this is the main page, and over there is the search button. So in the search, we'll search about the energy. And when we search about this energy term, so this is we are searching about the energy sector. Now we see that these groups are targeting the energy sector. APT33, Sharpshooter Group, G0104, or Aldridge. These are some like groups which are targeting the energy sector. Now we click over the APT33, and when we click over the APT33, we go to their page. Now we get to know what APT33 is all about. APT33 is an Iranian threat group. It like started in 2013, targeting United States, South Arabia, South Korea, and they have interest in aviation and energy sector. So, and over here we can see the associated groups, see the technique used. What are the techniques being used by this APT33? Okay, and here we can see the ID. So this ID is a global ID through which like it is acceptable all over the world. If you search this ID, you will directly come to the APT33 MITRE framework part. So out of which we'll just pick one of the techniques and see what this techniques information get like it has. So let's pick this brute force technique. So when we click over this brute force, we go to their page. So in the brute force, we get to see like brute force is a technique. It has sub 4 techniques in the brute force section, that is the password guessing, password cracking, password spraying, and credential stuffing. So these are kind of sub techniques of the brute force. Like this, how the brute force can be carried out. So this is again the ID. If you search about this ID, you will directly go to the brute force technique of the MITRE ATT&CK framework. These are the sub techniques IDs, which are like globally accepted. Then this is the tactic. This comes under the tactic of the credential access. Then these are the platforms which it can hamper. Then the permission required, the permission, the user should be like it should be an administrator to, or it could be anything like Instagram or Gmail account or something like that. Any user, it could be any user, and to exploit. Then data sources, like data sources here refers to from where we can monitor these things. Then the authentication log, like mainly we see the logs of the brute force. If there are multiple attempts, we can see the logs, like it has been tried many times to get into this account. Okay, and now these are some procedure examples. Are these now we are the APT33, and in the APT using the brute force technique. So here we list down some more groups with same technique to reveal the credentials. Like APT39 is using the brute force technique. Chaos is using the brute force technique against the SSH service to get the initial access. Okay, so similarly, and here are some of the mitigation factors, like how we can protect ourselves from getting our account like attacked by a brute force technique. So we can use a multi-factor authentication. Like in the generic sense, we see like whenever we log in, we log in with the password, but sometimes it actually asks like you are the one, so you have just received an OTP over your mobile phone, so that OTP act as a multi-factor authentication for your service. So, and the password policies, we can choose a strong password which could not be easily brute force or could easily be cracked. So that is kind of password policies we can refer to the NIST guidelines. So, and some these are some detection methods like monitor authentication logs for the system. So through this, we can detect like whether the brute force technique is being implemented over our systems or over our servers or over our network. So this is the whole mechanism. So now let's see, like now there might be something like APT 39, okay, APT 33, and APT 19. There might be many groups, okay. Now we go to the attack navigator. Now what this navigator is, we can see there are multiple list downs which you might not be aware of. So let's discuss one by one what this is all about. So we see there are reconnaissance, resource development, initial access, execution, persistence, privilege escalation, defense evasion, credential access, discovery, movement, collection, control, command and control, exfiltration, and impact. All refers to the tactics being used by an attacker. And down drop down, these all are the techniques being used by the for the reconnaissance. They can use the active scanning. For the resource development, they can use the account compromise. For the initial access, they can use the phishing, and in the phishing it was spear phishing, which we saw in the first slide. Then the execution method, we can use these techniques to go implement the execution tactic, and for the persistence we can use these tactics. So these is all the some different stages of the attack. Like they do the reconnaissance. In the reconnaissance, they gather the information about the sporting target. Then the resource development, like the advisories like purchase or compromise the resources that can be used to support the targeting. So like if they need any additional tool or any additional device to compromise the system, so they go for that thing. So now in the initial access is trying to get into the network, like how, like in with what methodology they want to get into the network, like either by sending an email and you just click over the email and they might get into a network like that. So now the execution is like trying to execute some malicious, which is like clear with the word. And then the persistence, like the persistence is to maintain the existence, like to maintain the foothold into your server. Like once it is entered, so it is try to obtain that foothold so that they remain into your. Then the privileges. Now the user might have entered as an not an admin, so they try to escalate their privileges so that they can get to their whole network, so to the whole infrastructure level. And defense evasion. So the defense evasion is to avoid the detection. Like how these are some techniques which they use to avoid the detection once they get into your network. Now the credential access. So the credential access is trying to steal the account names and the passwords. They might they might get admin credentials. Now they have taken their footholds, and they have also hijacked the system, and like now they are not even we are not able to detect them, and they even have the admin credentials. So now they discover, like in the discover they try to gain the knowledge about the system and the internal networks, like what it contains, what are the other things they can have the hands on. Then they do the lateral movement, is to like they move through the environment, and after moving through the environment they see like what services they are running, like what could be the useful things we can get out of it. Then the collection of the data, then not the collection of the data, but basically it's a collection tactic, and through this methodology they can use the collection of the data. Like we can see the collection from the information repositories, data from the local systems, so data from the network share drive. So these are some techniques which are being used to extract the data out of your compromised system. Then command and control. The command and control is trying to communicate with the compromised system. Like they might be like outside the network, so they are getting the hold of C2 servers to get a like to get to communicate with those compromised systems. Okay. So then exfiltration is like try to steal the data. Like they just try to steal the data by the data data transfer size limit. They might limit increase the limit size, and they might get the whole data dump from your network to their network, and they might get the access to your data, like confidential data. Then the impact section. The impact section is like they can do anything what they want. Okay, they can even manipulate your data. They can even make your data public. They can even destroy your data, and which could be a heavy price to. So this is all about the metrics of the MITRE framework. So now let's see what this red, yellow, this colored, what mean. So now we are at the APT 33. So now at APT 33, you might be seeing like in the resource development, they're using acquire infrastructure, and there is some score mentioned it like score 1. So the score 1. So what does this score 1 mean over here? And again, score 1, score 1, score 1. So now let's create another layer of an APT 33. So this creating of this map is known as heat map. Like this is a map which is mapped with the techniques of the APT 33. So this is the heat map for the APT 33 in the cybersecurity terms. So now goes to the layer. So when we go to the layer, we just go to the selection control, and in the section control we go to the multi-select. In the multi-select we see the threat groups, the list of threat groups, the software being used by the attackers to attack the system, and some mitigations. Okay, like what are the what could be the mitigations, like antivirus or auditing the network or data backup. So these are all the mitigations. So now we go to the threat group and let's select 33. So once we select 33, we see some boxes are being mentioned. Okay, so we initially select 33, let it be, and now we give it a color. Let's give it a color as a pink. The pink, we have given a color as a pink, and now we will do a scoring. Now how the scoring will help us, like the scoring is, let us say this is 6. Okay, so now this is a 6 score, and we have just given a score for our reference. It will get to know like why we are giving a score, why it is good to give a score. So this is a score 6, score 6. Now in the similar fashion, we create a heat map for the APT 19. See, for the APT 19, we create a heat map, and we have given a score 2 and a color yellow. It's just our choice what color we want to give. So see, yellow and a score 2. Now we want to create a layer. We want to get to know what are the common techniques which are being used by APT 33 as well as by the APT 19, so that we could get more aware. So at that is the common point where they come along, and from there they get they get to the another technique. So we can put a best defense mechanism at that technique so that we could protect our infrastructure. We can use the best mitigation methods at that technique, so that that our system cannot be compromised either by APT 33 or either by APT 19. So let's see. So let's see how that this is. So let's first understand, like we saw that score 1 represents to APT 33. Okay, score 2 represents to APT 19. Here the color changed, it automatically, like it is automatically shown by the heat map. But now down below we'll see a 3. Now this is score 3. This is something which is obfuscated files or information. This is the common technique which is used by the APT 33 as well as by the APT 19. Okay, so over here we need to be aware, like at this point we can see this techniques mitigations, and we can implement those mitigations over our network so that our network is not compromised at this point of level. Okay, now let's see how we create a common heat map for two APTs. Okay, now let's see. We go to the layer. We go to create layer from other layers. Okay, now we have already seen like this is already tagged A, B, and C. So I just give a score expression like A plus B. I want to merge A and B, so I have given expression of A plus B. Now I'll just put a create. When I'll just put a create, it will create a new layer. See, a layer by operation, which is a merge of A and B, and we can see down below a same green color which is highlighted as a score 3 to represent that this is a common technique which is used by the APT 33 as well as the APT 19. So this was about the heat map, and this was about the MITRE ATT&CK navigator, which can be widely used by the analyst to get to know about the techniques of the attackers. So now let's move forward with the PPT. So this is the kind of a screenshot just to go you through. So this was our step one. Step two, we search about the energy sector in the search bar. Then we search about, okay, we got to see this APT 33 was an APT group targeting the energy sector. Now we go to the APT 33 and search about the techniques used, that is a brute force, and any technique we can go. Then we go to this map. Then we go to this brute force section. We see what brute force is like. What we try to understand what it can do. Then we go to the navigator. We create a heat map for APT 38 or like some for any APT we can create. Then for APT 29, and then we create a common heat map. So here we can see the software packing is the common technique which is used by the APT 29 and APT 38 for by both. So this was the about the threat intelligence about the module 1. So now coming to the module 2, detection and analytics. So now this involves the collection of the logs event of the data systems and to identify the suspicious behavior of the attack, like how this what could be the how we can identify, how we can get to know about this behavior of these attacks. So, but now there are some levels defined by the MITRE. So what these levels are, so they have distributed, they have categorized into 3 levels. That is level 1, level 2, level 3. So level 1 is for the like small organization which do not have many resources in the term of security. Okay. So now level 2 is a mid-level organization which has some kind of some resources to handle their security stuff, handle the security team. Okay. Now the level 3 is kind of big organization, kind of big MNCs where they have the whole infrastructure level for the cybersecurity. Even they can produce their own product and tools to mitigate to like secure their network. Okay. So now at level 1, we'll see like looking the data sources, we see the techniques, and in the technique section, we see like we saw in the brute force page, the data sources. So the data sources are the part which we look to monitor. Like we need to monitor the packet capture thing so that we get to know whether we are being attacked by the spear phishing. Like in the brute force, we saw that we need to manage the user account, like authentication logs, so that we get to know either we are compromised by the brute force or not. Okay. So over here there are some open source tools which are available, which are like defined in the documentation. That is the file and register. For the file and registry monitoring, we can use this one. For the authentication log, like we can use Windows event log. And for the packet capture, that is this packet capture for the spear phishing link, we can use a tool named Zeek. And for the analysis, we can use the atomic red team. This atomic red team is a very useful tool, and we'll see like in the upcoming slides like what could be the benefit of this tool. Okay. So coming to the level 2, where the level 2 is a kind of mid-level organization, and how they will handle, like how they will detect this suspicious behavior of these attackers. So now let us see, this is a rec SVR32. So rec SVR32 is a technique which is being used. Okay. So registry server 32, and this technique, out of this technique, the technique used by the rec of 32 by the attackers, they can compromise our system. Like we will see like how they will do. So we don't have any idea, like we don't have any detection for the rex SVR32, and we are compromised by it. So how we can detect it, like how we can get a clear picture out of it, like, and how we can mitigate it. So we go to this MITRE website, we search for reg SVR32 over the MITRE website. Like we go over here and we sign for this regserve 32. Okay. So when we go to this regserve 32, we get to know this is a technique which is a part of a defense evasion tactic. Okay. And this is compromising the window platform users. Permission required, what kind of permission it required? Administrator or the user permission to execute this regserve 32 binary proxy execution. Okay. Now these are some data sources where we can monitor this thing. So it can be monitored at a process monitoring or window registry. Okay. And these are some APT groups which use this technique to do the defense evasion. Okay. So, and now let's see how the level 2 we can detect this reg SVR32. So now we will read about the techniques and the tactics like used as we saw in the main page of the MITRE. So now we use the atomic red team for the analysis, which is like mentioned in the documentation. So now how we use the atomic red team for the analysis. Now let's go back. So we see an ID over here. ID is T1218.010. Okay. So now this is a GitHub page of the atomic red team. We can download it and like we can install it over our system and we can like use the services. And if we have any problem, we can even connect to their Slack group and ask them like if you face any problem. So now how we use it. We're not going to execute it over here, but I'll just show you like what are the paths. So now we go into the atomics. When we go into the atomic section, so there are some T1 groups mentioned. Now we know about the ID. So we just take this ID. Okay, we get to see we saw this ID. Okay, so it is here. So this is a script, a YML script, which is there in the atomic red team atomics. Okay, so what we will do? We will just use that code to execute the reg SVR32. And when we execute the reg SVR32, we get to see that a CMD will pop up with a calculator in it. Okay, so that will also create the backlogs, like it will show like how this process was carried out, like how what after writing this code this calculator will pop up. If we modify this something to instead of calculator something else will pop up. So this kind of atomic red team help us to execute. And so in the atomics we can see like it contains a bunch of code. Sorry, uh, we can see a bunch of IDs is they are mentioned. It is for like almost for every technique, and we can execute these techniques to get like a feel like how this technique works and what how we can mitigate those things as well. So then we can use this swan to monitor the event and to analyze the event. So this is something at level 2. They can even write their own code as well for the workflow. So now come at the level 3. The level 3 is a kind of a very big organization. So they have a very big infrastructure and they have the money and the power, everything they have. So now we want to test the credential dumping technique using the tool MITRE ATT&CK. Okay. So now they have the red team and the blue team. The blue team is kind of a defense team, we say, and the red team is kind of an offensive team. They try to intrude into the system, and the blue team is a team kind. They try to mitigate those attacks. So we just define a layman language. So now blue team will write their analytics to detect that attack, okay, such that it can be executed over the CMD or over the PowerShell. And the red team will perform the attack and they will see the logs and navigate through the MITRE. Now they will navigate through the MITRE. That means they will see what techniques are being used by in the which tactic section, and while executing this attack, what were the different phases that were taken place while executing this attack. Now they will generate a heat map over the navigator as you saw, okay, and then they will understand the heat map, and then they will go to the mitigation files, like they will go to the mitigations, okay, for the each technique, and then they will try to understand that mitigation, and then they will try to implement those mitigation vectors over their net organization or over the network or over their defense mechanism. So that's the same thing which we have written over here. So now these are some open resources which are like mentioned in the documentation. So car equal, so sigma for the analytics, threat hunter playbook for the repository strategics, atomic red team library to for the red team to test their analytics. Okay, so this is the link. So Caldera and a brawl and attack navigator to visualize the attack metrics including the analytics coverage. So now comes to the third and the fourth module which we have covered, that is the advisory emulation, red teaming and assessment. So now what happens in this phase? So now we have demonstrated the atomic red team, we have demonstrated the script. Now what happens in this section? Here we try to prioritize the attacks, like we prioritize the gaps and the current coverage, okay, we prioritize the attack vectors, okay. So then we modify our defenses or acquire the new mitigation factors over our defenses so that we could be more secure. So this is kind of an assessment we do at the end. Okay, so this is at the level one. So at the level one, like we use the red team we to detect the technique and the procedures. And like when we are doing when we are running this thing, then like how it is done, like we choose the attack, we test the technique, we execute it, then we analyze it, then we make the improvements in our defense system. We get to know, okay, we using this technique, like while executing this script, we are getting compromised because of this loophole. So then we go and fix that loophole. So that's how we make improvement in our defense system, and then again we can do that circle, like we can choose the attack and then we can do the process the same. So now this is kind of the detection method. So now for the RDP, like this is just an example. So like visualize your coverage and do the appropriate engineering enhancement and start detecting it. So this is the kind of same thing which we have written. So we use the like we have to detect the RDP. So like whether our RDP port is open or not, and like whether it can be exploited or not. So we set up a monitoring process for like testcount.exe used for monitor service creation using the CMD or CND over the your command control and its arguments to prevent RDP session hijacking. So these are some detection methodologies which are also mentioned in the MITRE ATT&CK framework to detect whether our RDP section is being hijacked or not. Okay. So this is at the level 2. So now what happens at the level 2? So the level 2 has some like red team capabilities. They have the red team capabilities. It's not like they have the red team. They have the capabilities of that. And we have the attack and the common framework. So they can even write the reports or they can discuss within the mitigations, and they can also prioritize it using by giving some color coding like a green for high detection, yellow for medium detection, and white for low detection. Now what does that mean? Like they can use their own, they can use the tool and they can mark in the tool like if this kind of logs are present, like now suppose they are using the RTP session, like they are using RDP service, okay, and they are not using the SSH service. So SSH attack vectors are not a thing which they will try to mitigate. They will try to mitigate the RTP. They will try to monitor the RDP. Okay, so RDP detection should be at the highest level. So then they will say what are the techniques which target the RTP, or which are the like threat groups which target the RDP. Then they will mark that RDP section as a green section. Okay, now they can mark the SSH as the white. That could be the least priority they want to monitor. So that's what happened in the level 2 at the assessment level, and then they can do those mitigations as per their requirement. So now comes at the level 3. So at the level 3, this is kind of, we have everything. We have a full-fledged infrastructure. We have a red team, blue team, and the combined is known as the purple team. So we have everything in as a resource. We want to back up the attack. So what happens is here, like now the red team try to communicate with the blue team. Okay, they try to execute some attack vectors over their systems, and then they give the report to the blue team, and then the blue team try to mitigate those attacks. So they are kind of a live auditing which is being conducted over the systems. So now what they do, they gather the threat intel, like they see like what intel is being carried out, and then they extract the techniques. Okay, so these are some techniques which are being used by these attackers. Then they analyze, then they organize. Okay, so this is the like drive-by compromise is the very first technique which is being used. Then they put it in an order. So in this order, the attack will be executed. Then they might develop their own tools to detect those techniques, and then they emulate the advisory. Then they try to execute the same. And now if they have so many resources, then while going to the mitigation factor, they don't want to be like compromised by any of the factor. So then they try to put all the mitigation factors over their systems. They can even put the auditing part. They can even use the limit access resource over the network, or they can even use the multi-factor authentication like network segmentation, operating system configuration. So they can use all the mitigations over the network so that their network doesn't get compromised because of that vulnerability, or because of that thing, that loophole. So that's come at the last of the assessment at the level 3. So these were the 4 modules, or this was the kind of a basic thing which we tried to cover during this MITRE ATT&CK framework. I hope like you might have got something out of it, something productive. So that was all, and that was all about the presentation. If you guys have any questions about it, like it's free to ask about that questions. Thank you.
Hitesh, we have a question on the chat.
Sure. So chat. Okay.
On the questions, yes, I moved it on the questions.
Okay.
Uh,
So okay. So we have this question. Is this all being performed in Caldera? No, Caldera is a kind of a bas. A bas is a kind of it is a tool, like a Caldera is a GitHub tool. So this tool is kind of a proactive approach uh, where this people like they can do this kind of an exploitation we do. It could be like what we say that word, like it is automatic, like automatic pen testing, it is done over the platform. So at that where the Caldera is being used, and here we use some plugins, we can integrate some plugins, and then we can enhance the Caldera services to test our system, and it is kind of an automatic system. But in the atomic red team we have to write our own scripts, and or we can integrate those scripts and we have to perform it manually. So that is the kind of a main difference between the Caldera and the atomic red team. So that's where it stands out.
we have another one on the question section. Questions
Okay.
on the chat, below the chat.
Okay.
Yeah,
Sorry.
it's okay.
So yeah. So how the attack framework are different from the Lockheed Martin kill chain? Okay. So attack framework tells us about the techniques, like what techniques are being used to like to execute to achieve the target. But in the cyber, like Martin cyber kill chains, just tell about the process. Okay, the recon process is done, then the weaponized process is done. Okay, and then the processes, like the 7 steps of uh, Martin Lockheed. Yeah, then the delivery is done, then exploitation is done. But what are the techniques are being used to carry out that recon, to carry out that weaponize, or to carry out that delivery is being not mentioned, or like it is not covered in the cyber culture. So that's where the MITRE ATT&CK framework comes into the picture. As we see in the navigator, we can even see in the navigator, sorry, yeah, so we can see in the navigator for the recon process can be done, but what are the techniques which can be used to perform this reconnaissance process can be covered by the MITRE ATT&CK framework. So I think that's the main difference where we can see. Any other questions? Okay, so can we use some virtualized environment to analyze a complete cycle of attack and mitigation? Use some. Yes, we can use this. Like yes, we can.
I think that's all. I think so. If
Okay.
anyone has any questions or anything, they can raise their hands or ask them in the chat or in questions. Okay, I think that's it. So I think we are ahead of the schedule. We can stop the right.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Sai.
Thank
Thank
you.
you,
Thank you,
everyone.
Hitesh. Thank you everyone for joining.
Thank everyone.
The link for the live stream will be posted on the community forum, where you can watch it there. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.